Today, on a round of Gwent with, we have a real Brit on the show. You may know him from his ever-popular Twitch channel, where he used to stream World of Warcraft and KOTOR, but now routinely sings covers of overplayed Disney songs while threatening to show more shitless pics, or perhaps hosting a talk show with a previous guest of the program, but he is of no relation to the English king of the 12th century. All right, today, welcome, Lionhart. How are you this fine Sunday evening for you, I believe?
It is indeed. Yeah, I'm very good. Thank you, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How has your weekend been?
So far, so good. I'm avoiding power outages and thunderstorms right now. It's a little crazy. We've gone from glorious sort of 30 plus degree heat to thunder and lightning constantly.
Okay.
So
you're in
hearing loud crashing in the background. That's what it is.
Oh, wow. So the power might go out.
It shouldn't do. It's been fine. It should be fine.
If so, that'll be fun. Okay, man, that's the opposite of here. We've been getting, it hit 106 the other day, which I think is like 41 Celsius.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. It's Texas. So I like the heat better than the cold because now what sucks about it is the humidity. But to me, if it's 50, I'm like, that's cold. And to you, that's probably like perfect, isn't it?
Yeah, that's all right. I mean, I like the heat. It just doesn't like me. We have nothing here to prepare for it. Nothing is air conditioned. We have like tiny desk fans. It is not a situation that England is ready for. Not that we do cold well either, but we're more used to cold at least.
No, yeah, that's something that a lot of people here are just like, oh, look, people are complaining about 95. I'm like, they don't have air conditioning. Like we run the air conditioning here like on Christmas usually. So yeah, that's something different. Okay, so first thing we always lead off with is take us through an everyday, normal day. I repeated that a little bit in your life.
Of course, yeah. I mean, it's a little different at the moment because I'm recovering from knee surgery. So my normal day right now is very different because I'm at sort of, well, I say the back end of that recovery. It's going to be a while, but I'm getting back to normality. So a normal day, I'll wake up, I'll get up at around sort of 6:30 in the morning. I will take a shower, go for a walk and just sort of stretch my leg. Most of my day revolves entirely around physiotherapy and of course streaming. But it will be a case of I will exercise for a couple of hours in the morning before getting ready to stream. Usually if it's a weekday, I cook everything pretty much from scratch. It's an old habit. It keeps me busy, keeps me entertained. The idea of having 6 months off work sounds amazing until you do it. And it's incredible how quickly you become very bored. So it's just keep busy, keep busy, keep busy. It's pretty much my usual day.
Okay. See, I was in that same boat as you. I actually tomorrow start classes back up as a teacher. And wow. I have not had anything since what our spring break was in middle March. So I've had that 5 to 6 months off. And here's the thing about this, because it's always when someone says, oh, if you win the lottery, oh, if you get a lot of money, you'll be bored. I will never be bored because I will always find something in that sense. But will agree with you on when you have the time off, you almost take it for granted. And it becomes like, well, I don't need to do something because I can always do it tomorrow. And now that I'm going back, it's, oh man, there's so much stuff I want to do.
Very much. I know the exact same feeling. The first month or so was just, I'm just laying in bed anyway. So I had sort of like a brief couple of weeks of, I'm going to do absolutely everything. This is amazing. And you let yourself get into this idea of, okay, well, I've got all this time. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not back at work till October. It's fine. And already it's mid-August. There's that impending, I've got 6 weeks left. And there's that sort of, oh my God, I've got so much that I said I was going to do in this period of time. Obviously, I hadn't planned on there being a pandemic as well. But yeah, I have no idea. But it certainly changes things. I will treat my time very differently when I return to a normal schedule with work. I will prioritize things a little differently than I used to, definitely.
Okay. And again, I don't mean to get too much in business or price. So if there's anything like that, you don't got to answer it. Yeah, but so what is it that you do?
World's most tedious job. I am a logistics and basically a manager for the UK Postal Service. I run a couple of the counties for Royal Mail, effectively, Worcestershire and Herefordshire, and the units that are inside that. So it's logistics management. It's a very strange business compared to what I used to do. I used to work in healthcare. I ran a pharmacy chain, effectively. Very, very different role, culture, everything. So I'm still getting used to that. I've only been there 4 years, I think now. It's a very weird environment, I'll be honest, but it's challenging. It's good.
It definitely seems like it's better to be involved with the UK Postal Service than the American Postal Service right now.
Well, they're trying to do to the American Postal Service what they did to the UK Postal Service about 7 years ago.
Really?
Yeah, it was a government-run, publicly funded thing, and they privatized it, and it was the worst decision they ever
I didn't
made.
know that.
It got privatized, and the quality of service fell off a cliff. Yeah, it's not a good thing. Do not privatize your postal service, America. Seriously, trust me on this.
I don't think there's anything more American than privatizing the public sector. But the thing about it is, and the Postal Service in the United States is literally guaranteed in the Constitution. Like, it's literally in there. So if they were to ever get rid of it, they should, I would at least think, have to change the Constitution, like make an amendment. And I don't know. Like,
yeah.
It's like the whole, I'm telling you, I'm probably never going to have kids, but if I did, this whole right now 6 months that it's been into the pandemic, and who the hell knows? Because I don't think everything's going to be even remotely normal until there's a vaccine.
Completely agree.
Everything that's going to come down. And again, as a history teacher, I just imagine in 30, 40 years, there's no way those kids will be able to contemplate what the hell has transpired since March.
No, that's the thing. The amount of things that have happened in the past, we'll say 6 months, but spread it out to maybe 2 or 3 years, is normally the kind of bedlam that would happen over the course of decades of, it's just so concentrated right now with so many different things sort of climaxing at the same time. It's looking from the outside, it's terrifying watching the amount of things that are just completely abnormal. It's a strange time right now.
And I'm just always fascinated by the perspectives of everybody else, because I think so many Americans like me take it for granted that we are in essentially the most powerful country who has essentially dominated the world politics since at least World War II. And we kind of just take it to where, oh, this is what we do, this is what we have. But people on the outside looking into like our situation, I'm just always fascinated by what they think of it. Because there's certain things, like to me, England, like the United Kingdom, for instance, it's so crazy to me that there's still a monarch and there's still a queen, and they still, not that there's still that, I should say, that there's still a Buckingham Palace, that there's still all this money given to them, that they have all this inherited wealth. And again, to an American, it's just insane, even though there's a ton of inherited wealth in the United States, just not with titles and all that. And that to me is just crazy to think. It's another thing that's just hard to wrap my head around of being on the inside of this situation. So how would you describe your general thoughts on the American situation?
It's surreal. As you say, like World War II onwards, and maybe a little before, America has sort of dominated world politics, certainly in Western culture anyway, and becoming more and more world power-wise. The last, I'd say decade, particularly from the shift from Obama over to Trump, normal has changed. What's acceptable? Precedent was a big deal in American history. Always has been, but enshrined in your law, the importance of precedent. And it's now entirely irrelevant. And you've gone from being viewed as the central world power that the West looks to the dodgy cousin. America is now the Florida of the world, as a friend put it to me who is American. And it's a little scary because it changes what's normal. Like currently in the UK, our Prime Minister is a guy called Boris Johnson, who he's the strangest kind of inept I've ever met. He was elected because he has funny hair and he says slightly racist things every now and again. It's infuriating.
It sounds like Trump.
Well, he's discount Trump, but he gets away with a new level of weird because, but Trump's worse. So what he's doing is not that bad. And it warps normality everywhere else. People say, it doesn't matter what he's doing. Of course it matters. He changes what's normal, not just in America, but everywhere. But I mean, Trump, I could rant about this for hours. He's not the cause of America's problem. He's the culmination of issues that have been happening for a long time. Someone like Trump doesn't exist in power if there aren't underlying issues already based on the way your voting system works, the Senate, gerrymandering, people like Mitch McConnell existing in the world. All of these things have to culminate to even make that possible. And they did.
Yeah, I don't know how familiar you are with like U.S. history in that sense. But again, it's something taught. And I used to be on the other side of the spectrum. I'm very, very, very far left. And I used to be very, very far right. And like you said there, you hit the nail on the head of what Trump is. And everyone tries to say, and a lot of Republicans try to say this, where it's just, oh, no, he's just a bad apple. And it's like, no, this is coming back all the way from Eisenhower that started with the rise of the religious right. And are you familiar with Lee Atwater and the Southern Strategy? Have you heard of that?
I've heard of it.
Okay. So that basically was, the entire South right now is basically Republican. Yes. Up until about the Reagan years in the 80s, the entire South was Democratic.
Yeah, it flipped.
It flipped generally because the Democrats really led the civil rights. And so they started to lose a lot of the racist Southerners. And that's the Southern strategy that Lee Atwater had was, hey, we're going to go against it to get those Southern states. Yeah. And that kind of culminates and builds up. And like I said, I was a big problem of it because on my college campus, I started a young conservatives group. Wow. And so, yeah, experiences take us in all different ways. And I've worked and coached at 2 public schools that were minority majority, including one in the inner cities of an inner city, big city around here. And I'm telling you, that'll change your perspective if you have any kind of empathy or heart in that sense.
Would hope so, wouldn't you?
I would think so. So, okay, we've gotten into a little bit here with the politics and that. Let's take it back to something that might even sadden you a little bit more. And I'm sorry for bringing it up, but I'm genuinely just curious. You're a big time streamer there, right?
I'm definitely a streamer.
You have just been rejected again for a partner. Yes. My thing is, I have seen in the last several months, at least a couple people who generally stream Gwent, the same game you generally stream, whose channel has not been as big as yours, I would say, get approved for partner. Yeah. And I mean, you probably know this better than anybody just because you've been in on it and now you've sadly been rejected. How many times?
3.
Okay, so you got
lucky from before.
You got the hat trick down. You're going for the Hambo next. So, I mean, why do you think it is? What is that process that you know of?
I mean, there's a set of 3 goals you have to hit to apply for partner, but that's just the intro application that they tell you about. And I at least double all of those requirements and have done consistently. There's obviously more to that than we know entirely. It's a case of you have to stream a certain number of times a month. You have to have a certain number of average viewers. And there's a third one, which it's either followers or subs or something like that. But there's obviously more to it than that in the background that they don't tell you about, whether it's age, gender, nationality, number or percentage of partners who stream. So as you say, recently, quite a few people have been partnered in the last 3 months, I would say. If you're on Twitch during my prime time, over half of the streamers streaming are partnered in our game. From a perspective of Twitch, they're looking at that and thinking, do we need more Gwent partners? If I put my business head on a second, I'm thinking, well, have we got too many Gwent Twitch partners? Is it too easy to become partnered in Gwent because there's a demographic there? You know, lots of viewers, very few streamers. It's frustrating for me because I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing. As far as I know, the feedback you get is, we have decided not to take you this time, but it doesn't hurt you to try again. It's not do this differently. Yeah. And I know I'm a little different to most Gwent streamers. I never forcibly try hard to get, I'm not trying to qualify for tournaments, and I spend most of my time talking over the home screen rather than playing. So I know I'm a little different. Maybe that hurts my growth or style. I honestly don't know, but it can be very frustrating. It can, but.
Because there's another, and I won't say the name, but it'll be pretty easy to deduce if people pay attention to Gwent and streamers. There's another streamer who has really exploded on the scene, I'd say, the last several months, is the same like sex as you, is the same nationality as you. Yeah. And he got partnered very quickly. Like that. It was insane. And not to take away anything from him. No,
and I'm absolutely thrilled for him as well. I
mean, it's Specimen, great dude. Yeah.
Plenty of time for Speci. We cast together, we have in the past. Yeah, I was so made up for Speci when he got partnered. But as I say, we were in a very similar situation. My application at the time, very, very similar to his. For some reason, mine took 58 days to get back to me, and I don't know why. It says 7, but we're going to skip over that. Yeah, it's very weird. As I say, I am absolutely made up for Speci and everybody that gets partnered. I am really pleased. Because it's confusing, when one gets it and the other doesn't. I don't know what I'm doing differently.
Well, one thing that I would think of, especially it would be subs, but like, I mean, you have a fair amount, like you have a large amount in there.
I
So
have
I don't,
never, yeah, without going into numbers, like a lot of the people who do it for a job, like your Trinets and your Spyros, they tend to have their sub count up, visible on the stream, and they'll have a daily sub count. I have been tracking at the same sub level as them for 6 months. I don't publish it or publicize it because obviously it's not necessarily why I'm doing it. And I'm not trying to make it my full-time job right now. But sub-wise, I'm pretty confident I keep up with anybody and everybody in Gwent, which is weird. So one of the triggers.
Yeah, they obviously would know that when you apply.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they've got all that information.
I don't know. I guess they're just throwing darts at a board. I don't know.
Who knows? I'm genuinely unsure. But I will keep doing what I'm doing unless someone comes to me and says, this is physically what you're doing wrong. I then might change my tact. But for now, I enjoy doing what I'm doing. I stream because I love it. It's good fun. It's literally just like sitting here with however many people are in the chat, laughing, having a joke, talking to them about their day life. It's good, man. That's why I do it. It's fun.
Yeah, I'm a one night a person. I do it Saturday nights, and I do it generally with my fiance because if I'm by myself, I find it a lot harder to kind of vamp kind of on my own in that sense. And so I like having somebody else, especially somebody to have chemistry with, which I would hope 8 years together we would have good chemistry.
You certainly would hope.
Yeah. And so to hit on that, you've started casting with, as you mentioned before, Speci. Did y'all do yesterday? Did y'all do some yesterday?
No, I didn't do them yesterday. Okay. I'm going to start casting more, but only if the tournament client exists. Casting over people, I find it a little weird. And I know it's a thing. I know everyone does it. But if somebody's streaming their games and there isn't a client and it's not an official tournament, I feel weird just grabbing their content and being like, excellent, I'm going to do no work here. Yeah. I'm going to watch you and I'm going to talk over you. And it's weird to me. I know it's a thing. I know it's been, no one cares. It's just that I feel weird about it, so I don't do it. I have sent a few messages saying with the qualifiers, personally, I think we need to change the way those work, but we'll get into that.
Put a pin in that.
We'll put a pin in that. But could we not, now that the client is more available, could those qualifiers not be using the tournament client? So that it is possible to cast. There are plenty of us that want to cast. There's a great group of people within Gwent across multiple nations, nationalities, languages, whatever, who want to cast this game. Let us do it. Is that something that could be done?
What's the hardest thing with casting? What gives you the most issues?
Honestly, I love everything about it. I really do. The client, now that it works, before we had the tournament client, you were guessing and it was really difficult. Obviously, I'm an okay Gwent player. I can be good if I try hard. Watching players of the very top quality play is fascinating because you're trying to make calls and they're making plays and lines that you don't necessarily see. So sometimes that can be quite difficult if you let it bother you. But a lot of the time it's about letting them lead it. But having chemistry with whoever you're with is massive, like you've just said. If there's no chemistry there between the two people, especially when it's digital or remote, it can be quite hard. It'd be a lot easier, like in the old tournaments when they were in person. The chemistry is a physical thing, and you can pick up on those tiny little second voice cues where somebody pauses or looks to you. You don't get that digitally because of ping or just simply because it's harder to pick up on those things. Fortunately, I've been really lucky. Speci and I have got great chemistry, so that's worked really well. There is going to be more casting coming soon, but I can't say what it is. And I will be casting with someone else. I'm very excited for that. So yeah, there'll be another tournament being announced very shortly. So.
Do y'all have roles? Because I don't know exactly the terms in the UK, but in the United States, there's generally two announcers. There's a play-by-play, and then there's a color, which is usually like the analyst or somebody who's like a former player. So do y'all have set roles, or do y'all just kind of play it by ear?
Not really. I mean, it depends on who you're working with, because let's say I was paired with someone like a Shin Miri. He is obviously incredibly strong in one of those roles. And there is no situation where I would try and encroach on that. I would take the other role. I'm quite comfortable in either. And I think Speci feels very similarly. So it can work quite well. It depends on who you're casting with ultimately. And I'll play to their strengths effectively. I'm very comfortable in either role. So yeah, I honestly don't mind. But you do have a chat about it before. Speci and I had a quick chat when we first did it. And it was literally like a 15-minute thing of, right, everything's set up. If I do this or do this, feel free to jump in. Same with you. If there's anything you need me to know or want me to do, this is how that'll work. Fortunately, we had very natural chemistry, so it was never an issue.
So to hit on how the tournaments and the qualifiers are done, last night, like I said, I stream generally late where it's 8 o'clock my time, which is, I think, like 5 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time. It's 7 hours behind Central European time. And the qualifier just ended. And
it was just gone 2 a.m. in the morning for me.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. 8, it'd be 2 for you. And when I saw that, I'm like, oh my God. Red Rain came into my stream. We started talking about it and I asked him about it, how it was done. And these seem to take, like 15 hours at a minimum?
And that's for the top 16. The top 64 is 2 days of that.
Yeah. So how would you, obviously you think it should be changed, hitting on what you said earlier. Do you have any ideas of how it should be done or streamlined at least?
It's difficult because there's a couple of options. At the moment, it's best of 5. And it's understandable because in best of 3, coin flip is much more important. You get a lot less chances to get the decks through when you want them, how you want them. That is one of the options, but I can understand why they don't want to go about it that way. The other option is it shouldn't be double elimination for the entire thing for me, particularly in the top 64. But in the top 16, double elimination should only be the case for me at the semi-final or final stage, maybe, where from semi-finals onwards, there's like a double elimination option. Going through for the whole day, if you get eliminated in that first round and you want to get back to the final, like you say, it's a 15-hour day, which is, I love Gwent, but 15 solid hours of the highest level of Gwent is ridiculous. And you're trying to work out, is it an advantage for the player? So like Pajavol, he was obviously sat waiting for them to play, and he's been sat there like this for a couple of hours, but that's not necessarily great for him. He wants to go for a sleep, or he's now got to stay awake and stay entertained. He was watching the last game that I saw between, who was it? It was Andy and somebody else. And it was absolutely insane because he's having to sit there watching it to stay awake effectively, which is just crazy. I love tournaments. I want more tournaments in Gwent. A competitive scene is great for the game. A well-built competitive scene with a decent client, all of that's great. But if winning a tournament comes down to who's got the most endurance, it's not the best thing. And by the end of it, you can see how exhausted people are. And you can see them making plays that players of their quality probably wouldn't if they were rested. So you do wonder, what can we do to streamline this? Because splitting it over more days, especially with it being, a worldwide game, doesn't work. Oh, it's great. We'll do it on Friday nights. Who's Friday night? Wait, they might be at work if it's someone from China or America might be asleep, or how do you make that work? But for me, I would get rid of double elimination up until at least for the first couple of rounds, shorten it by a good 3 or 4 hours if you do that.
Yeah, that just the whole day. And then, like you said, even if you win, you're rewarded with time off, but then you're sitting and waiting. And on an episode that came out before with Busher, I asked him what he does. And he said he takes a nap and just kind of, tries to get his bearings straight on that sense. And even then, it's just, I don't know how well you could sleep thinking, okay, I can't oversleep for this.
Yeah.
And that was, because there's one thing when I played, it's not as much anymore, especially now with COVID. I played slow pitch softball. And we'd have tournaments like this. And it'd be the same thing. If you lost your first game, you're thrown into that loser's bracket, and then you're almost playing every hour until the end. But in a way, that kind of helped us because we were always playing and we weren't sitting around. Granted, that's a physical team activity. It's not at a computer where, I don't know, just like you said there about sitting in front of a computer. I've never had a job where I've had to sit in front of a computer like all the time. I've always been able to kind of walk around.
At least, yeah.
And man, I don't know. That's the most impressive thing to me is it's not even the gameplay of how good these people are and how easy they make it look. Yeah. It's the fact that they can sit there all day and just maintain, most of them, maintain composure.
Yes. Yeah.
And just keep that level head. And to even with streaming, I generally don't stream sober. I tend to drink because if I'm going to play Gwent for longer than a few hours, I got to be drinking that sense.
So it's grease the wheels. Fair.
Yeah. It's what's the average stream that you generally go? How many hours?
About 5 hours usually. It depends. If I'm playing Gwent I have a 5 hour stream. About 3.5 hours of that is Gwent. The first hour minimally is always just me chatting and catching up with everybody. And then there's just a bit of downtime in between where we'll be messing around. If I'm playing an RPG, I could stream for 12, 13, 14 hours without wanting to stop. But Gwent is a very different style of game, and having that, even the way I play, the concentration to do it, Yeah, it's a sort of a 5-hour cap, unless I'm having a really good time or doing something really weird. Usually it's around 5 hours.
Yeah, usually it's chat that can kind of break up the monotony and to do that, because some people out there, it's 8-10 hours a day. And
I can't. I mean, it takes Spyro. The guy's a machine.
Yeah.
I honestly don't understand how he streams 8 hours of Gwent 7 days a week. I don't understand how he does it. It's impressive. There's just the consistent. It's insane. I don't know how he does it. The guy's a machine.
I think I generally don't watch his stream too much, because I think he generally starts at like midnight my time, 1 a.m. And there's times when I've gone in there and he's starting to lose it a little bit. Like, he starts to crack, and I'm like, oh my God. I don't want to watch it, because it's one of those, it's almost like, almost like a car wreck or a train, because he's getting frustrated and something's going to happen, and it's just like, oh man.
Waiting for it to happen, yeah. And I mean, there's a big market for that, obviously. People love to watch things like that sometimes. I say it's not particularly my style either. I'm very different, but he's just on his pure consistency of, he's always there. No matter how triggered he is, no matter how annoyed he is with the game, he always is there. I mean, and his growth has been exponential as a result.
Yeah.
Fair play to him. I couldn't physically do it. I don't think, not at that level, not with the same game. I could stream 8 hours a day, 7 days a week if I was varying the game. I could not do the same thing every day. Couldn't do it.
Especially it's not even just Gwent. It'd really just be a card game, even though I haven't really played too many other ones. So the name Lionhart, where'd you get that from?
It's a Final Fantasy thing. I am one of the biggest Final Fantasy lovers you will ever meet. I have played all of the main strand games. I own all of the main strand games in English, the American version and the Japanese versions, where they were printed. I've played through them constantly. I used to speedrun Final Fantasy VIII. I got world record pace in Disc 1 and 4. Disc 2 always let me down, so I never bothered pushing for it, but I was, always been a big lover. The games came out when I was younger, during an interesting time in my childhood, and they, without sounding too lame, kind of saved me from the real world. They gave me a sense of, I can go here and I can do this. And as a result, I've always loved them.
I think that's video games in general. That's always been the thing with me also, is no matter the game that I play, it's generally, like you said, to get away from the real world. And what I like about games like The Witcher, and especially like your medieval fantasy, is that was my main area of study, was like medieval Europe. It's nice. In that world, things can make sense, and bad people can be punished. Yes. Good people can be rewarded, and justice can be had. And in the real world, that's generally not the case.
Very much so. It's a case of, I'm in control of every decision that I make here. There is no impending block that I can't overcome eventually. And even though you'd like to think the real world was like that, it isn't always. So yeah, that escapism is vital. And it's no different than, reading a book but the impact it has, it was definitely a saving grace for me back then. Definitely.
That's a big reason too why I really started writing was, there's certain things, like I read The Witcher or read like Game of Thrones and all that. And it's like, okay, I like that, but there's certain stuff I would want to do. And then, I can do it. And it annoys me when, again, this is the history person in me, when reading people talk about like Game of Thrones and they're like, oh, well, that wouldn't happen because in blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, this ain't medieval France. This is a fake thing. You can do whatever you want.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's made up. You don't have to be like, oh, in reality, girls would be wed at 14 and they'd be da 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 da. And
not in Westeros. Move on.
But that's the thing. It's like, okay, well, you don't have to do that. And again, the creation can be whatever you want. And that's with games, especially if it's something, I guess that wouldn't be too much. Even if it's like a Skyrim where it's like a blank slate of something where you have your own character. You can do whatever you want.
It to be. Very much so, yeah. And in gaming, it feels like that's a lot easier to do than in some books. As I've read, I love reading. I read a lot of sci-fi, a lot of fantasy, and very few authors have ever made me feel like they've created a real universe, if that makes sense. Plenty of them will tell a good story, but very few have ever gripped me to the point where I'm there thinking, I believe this could be a real place. Like the author's got, like Terry Pratchett, the guy had a universe in his head. He literally had an entire universe within him. it's terrifying. The more and more I read of him, I love his humor anyway, but it feels like he'd been there. It feels like he's telling you about a journey that he took across all these planets with all these thousands of people. And gaming does that a lot easier, for me anyway, than most books do. But yeah, it's quite rare when a book does do it.
It's imagination too. You can kind of fill in the blanks. If they don't explain it, you can really fill in the blanks. So one thing, Harry Potter, big Harry Potter fan, right?
Yeah, I am indeed.
Read all the books?
Of course, they're on my shelf right there.
Okay. What's your favorite book?
The Goblet of Fire. Loved it.
Really?
I remember queuing to get it as a child. We had a bookstore in my town called Otter's Bookstore. And whenever a Harry Potter book would come out, they'd do a midnight release, but they'd change the whole store and call it Potter's. So you'd all queue up, and if you were wearing like the ridiculous, if you got like a Harry Potter thing, you got a discount on the book, and it was a whole big thing. And they'd stand there and they'd hand out warm drinks while you were waiting until midnight. And it was weird because as those books came out, I was the same age as the characters in the books. So with every one that was released, it felt like you were growing up with them almost in a weird kind of way. Yeah. It's like, this is the other version of reality that, you know, my letter never turned up. It's a terrible shame. You know, the damn Voldemort taking over the ministry, got all the letters, didn't go out to the Smuggleborns. And that was that. But yeah, I've been a big fan since I didn't read the first one as it was released. And then the second one was coming out. So I read the first one and then literally I queued to get every one as it came out as a kid. I loved every second of it.
I remember I was a little older. I think the first one came out in like 97, 96.
I think so, yeah.
97, something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like 13 when that came out. And again, this was the 90s in the United States. It was the 90s in Texas. The biggest thing that I remember about Harry Potter was people wanting to ban them because it promoted witchcraft. And that's how I got my introduction to Harry Potter.
Wow.
Was people wanting it banned in schools, because it was one of those things where, kids are reading it. Kids are actually reading, and they just wanted it banned because of witches and it was the devil.
Oh my Lord, that's hilarious. That wasn't, well, at least I wasn't aware of that being a thing here. It probably was somewhere, but 90s England was very open-minded. Certainly by comparison to how it feels now. So they would not have cared about that back then. Certainly not mainstream and public anyway. That's hilarious.
Yeah, they obviously didn't ban them, but mercifully that stuff does not seem to come about anymore. All right, so what's your favorite movie of the Harry Potter? What's your favorite movie?
Oh, that's tough. They're weird as films. I love them as films, but I can see what's wrong with them as well, if that makes sense. I love watching them grow up within the films, and I love that they did the same thing. It's probably The Half-Blood Prince as a guess. It's difficult because they're one of those films in my head that I know they're all kind of corny, but I love them anyway. They're a perfect Sunday afternoon film for this kind of weather. Hot chocolate, sofa, Harry Potter. I am sorted. It's like my dream Sunday. I am genuinely that dull. It's my idea of heaven. So yeah, but I would say that one. I quite like the way that one was done. It shifted. It became very dark, very brooding. The story moved along quite nicely. You were made to question things if you hadn't read the books about how it was going to work. And I felt like it represented the book reasonably well.
See, I never read the books. I've read some of the first one, but I watched all the movies, and I watched them all maybe 2 or 3 years ago, maybe 3 years ago or so. And that was one thing, because we just plowed through them all on one day. And that was one thing. They literally, and even the logo at the beginning, they literally gets darker each time. And to me, the later ones, and it's probably different if I'd read the books before, and like you said, had grown up with the characters, because obviously books are more in depth than movies can ever be.
Yes, definitely.
Books are more in depth than even a series could be. And the biggest thing there was, it was so like depressing at the end, and like especially Deathly Hallows, and because I think that might be my fiance. She's read all the books, she loves them and all that. I'm not sure if that's her favorite per se, but she loves that, and I'm like, this is just too depressing. I don't want
you lose the innocence of it all, don't you?
It's just
definitely.
Like everything is bad, nothing good happens.
Everyone's dying, the world's on fire.
Well, every success they make, every Horcrux they destroy, like didn't that kill like a piece of Harry also?
He was one of them. He was actually a Horcrux himself. Okay. So yeah, he is feeling pain every time that happens. But for Voldemort to die, he has to die. But if he dies, it's an interesting plot mechanic for sure.
Yeah,
But
it just kept getting more depressing. And then especially Dobby dies at the end of the first one, right?
oh, that
Death
breaks
House
my
Part
heart.
One.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just like,
Oh,
why?
Dobby. I know. I know. Although when that came out in the book, and obviously he died, it was actually Hedwig dying the owl that hit me more bizarrely. In the films, Dobby dying absolutely broke me, but in the books, it was Hedwig. It was really weird. It was the
See,
owl.
and to me, like as sad as the Dobby one was, like I didn't even like you just sent a trigger to me about
Hmm.
Hedwig. Because a
Yeah.
big thing, and this goes back to me at one point being like super religious, and that's what I was, like very Christian. I think what drew me
Okay.
to that was the idea of sacrifice. I'm no
Hmm.
longer anymore, but to me, the idea of sacrifice. And I don't know if it was the same way in the books, but in the movie, like you said, like Hedwig dies.
And it's literally a case of I'm going to stop this hurt. Yeah, very much so. And
Yeah.
it's like a oh,
In that,
oh my
like,
heart.
yes. Even like
Yeah.
now, that's like choking me up. And it's just like, because that like
Yeah.
hit. So that
It
hit
still
me.
hits me.
Oh, that hit me more than anything. And I bet I forgot about it because I was repressing it.
Just literally no, can't think about it. Yeah,
And
it's
you just
still
brought it back
happening.
up.
Yeah, it's my apologies. No, it's still yeah, that one still hits me because it's the ultimate sacrifice. I know exactly what's going to happen here. I'm going to die, but yeah, it still hits me when I think about it, which is I suppose what it was written to do.
Yeah, and I mean, there was payoff, that's for certain, because people died. Not that many people, like main people, maybe from the movies, because I know like Sirius died, obviously
Yeah.
Dumbledore died, but it didn't seem like there was too much. I don't know if you want to say like negative happening. I mean, bad things were happening, but there wasn't like this death. And then it's like, okay, you want it, and it's just boom, 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 boom,
And
boom, boom.
everybody's gone.
And then like
Yeah.
half the people are gone in that sense. And so it just, yeah, I prefer, I like the earlier ones because I'm obsessed with like the Hogwarts aspect. And with that unannounced, yeah, it's still unannounced, the Harry Potter RPG that's
Yes,
supposed to
officially
come out
unannounced.
next year. Yeah.
Yes.
That to me interests me because you're going to be, I think it said, again, nothing's been announced, but it's been quote confirmed by, journalists and all that. I think it said you're going to start out as like a third year student and you pick your house and all that. And to me, that's what I like. Like the first two movies, I see the problems with them. Like you said before, mainly
Yeah.
Chris Columbus was the director, and
Doesn't
it's
help.
kids movies. That's fine. He did it when they were small children, and then they got Alfonso Cuarón, one of the best directors, to do the third one. And that's just one of those where I love the idea of Hogwarts, the idea
Yeah.
of boarding schools and the exploration of that. And so that I'm so interested in that game just to explore that aspect of
It
Harry
could be
Potter.
really fascinating. I've been waiting for that game for so long. It was due to be confirmed, announced, and demoed at E3 this year
Yeah.
when it was physical, and obviously that's been hooked. There's at some point supposed to be a Warner Brothers show case of games coming forward and with their devs of who's doing what and how that game's going to look, but everything is at the moment up in the air, isn't it? We don't know when, if, how far along it is. There's been some leaked footage. We don't know how real that is, when it's from. Alpha footage is always a risk to consider anyway. So yeah,
It is
I
funny
will
that
definitely play it.
it is funny that they haven't announced it, but they
Yeah.
did comment on that J.K. Rowling has nothing to do with
Yeah,
it.
seriously, it's nothing to do with it. Look, we are just taking the world that she created. She has no say here. Yeah.
It's just funny to me that wait, does this game exist? And they come out saying, look, she has nothing to do with it. Oh, what game? Nothing. They're going back in the shadows of look, whatever y'all are talking about, she has nothing to do with it. All right.
Yeah.
And
All
then
you
they're
know,
out.
look, she's definitely not here. Bye.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
All right, you big Disney fan, right?
I am a huge Disney fan. Yes,
Okay.
always have been.
What is your favorite? Not necessarily the best and all that. What's your favorite of like the non-Pixar Disney animated
Hercules,
ones?
no question.
Really?
Easy. Love Hercules.
Okay,
First film
how
I ever
so?
saw in the cinema as a kid
Okay.
was Hercules, but I always loved it. I adored it. I loved everything about it. Who doesn't want Rip Torn as Zeus? I don't want to imagine a world where that's not a thing, but I loved everything about it. I loved the songs, and it wasn't one of the quintessential everybody loves Disney's. It used to be The Lion King, but when I was a child, I've got a big family, and one of my sisters was obsessed with The Lion King when she was little. At the time, this was late 90s, and The Lion King was everywhere. But in my house, it was really everywhere. It was on 3 televisions, 24/7. And I don't mean she would move rooms. No. We had 3 copies of this damn film. I still can recite that film word for word while watching it. Every song, every breath, because I must have seen it a million times.
Wait, it was playing on every...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Every room had The Lion King. I have no idea why this was allowed.
Where your parents said?
I have no idea, but it was... And it might just be an exaggeration that my brain created, but it was literally perpetual Lion King. Every room I would walk into, it was on for about a year of my life. So as much as I love it, it stopped being the Lion King and it definitely became Hercules.
Jeez. Yeah, that was, oh my gosh. Yeah, I can't imagine that. So yeah, mine would be Hercules, I think is absolutely very underrated. And the song, and I'm drawing an absolute blank. It was the Meg song that she sang.
There's a couple, not Zero to Hero, but Meg sings.
I'm completely drawn a blank.
I won't say I'm in love.
There you go, that one. Yeah, that's a top fiver for me right there. Yes. I think mine would be Princess and the Frog.
Oh, good choice. That's a great film.
And see, what's weird about that is the first one that I saw would have been Aladdin, because that would have been when I was 9, and that's the one I really remember actually seeing in theaters. But Princess and the Frog, I love New Orleans. I love like that Art Deco, like the 20s, it's kind of like a roaring 20s pre-Depression era. And the music to that, just about every song is just amazing. And I like how they kind of flip that, subverted expectation in there of it being, the kissing, you got to kiss the prince and all of that sense, but it kind of changes up who was the prince, who was the princess and all that aspect. So that's one I wish more people would see. And unfortunately, I believe that's the last hand-drawn one they've done.
I think you're right, actually. They stopped hand-drawing after that. It was all CGI animation past that, wasn't it? I do miss that style.
Yeah, I think it was Tangled. I think because it didn't do too well. I think I heard where Tangled actually started out hand-drawn. And when that came out, I think they kind of reverted. And then they changed it. Because before Princess and the Frog, you had names like that. And then from that moment on, it's Tangled. And with Pixar, it's Brave, it's Frozen. And so they went to these also even gender neutral to kind of hit up on that aspect, because they figured, Princess and the Frog, boys aren't going to want to see that, which, I mean, I guess that's the truth, but that kind of sucks.
It really does, because it's such a good film. The soul of that film is fantastic. And like you said, the soundtrack, so good in that film.
Okay.
I mean, I still like Tangled and Frozen, but yeah.
And I got my Frozen cup here. Frozen cup there for you. Actually, that's kind of, for me also, that's what I kind of drink. We've got multiple Disney cups here because, again, Lindsay's absolutely obsessed with it in that aspect. With Pixar, what's your favorite Pixar?
The Toy Story 2.
Okay, again, why is that?
No, when watching it as a kid, it was fantastic. Mainly it's from the PS1 game. Toy Story 2 as a game was different level. It was so good. I still remember it now. It's one of those weird things that you sort of bond with over your siblings that you would normally fight with. We all loved this game. And it was one that everybody in my family loved the film. We saw it countless times. And it was just so much fun. Every time I think about it, I just smile. Like from playing the game, watching the film over and over again. I just absolutely loved it. I really do. So
it's a lot of like nostalgia reason, puts you back in a place. Yeah,
it was a much simpler time. And everybody in my family still loves it. It's one of those films that if we all get together for whatever reason, if we're all sat there and it's like, just throw something on, it will probably be something like that, because it's completely easy. Everybody loves it. Everybody knows it. And it's quite comfortable. There's no worry about it.
Would you say you're very nostalgic for a lot of things?
Sometimes, yeah. With films, yes. Everything else, not so much. It's weird. I try and stay as forward-thinking as I can, if that makes sense. Nostalgia is great; it has its place, but I find that if I get too nostalgic, I stop and I only focus on back, not forward. So I try not to be too nostalgic if I can help it. As weird as that sounds.
No, that's something I've always been that way, and I think what happens naturally as you get older, things start to hit on, especially if you start to get in like the same comfort area. Because I've become more, I'd say, nostalgic the past year or so, and I've never been that way. I've always been that I don't want to go back to the past, don't live in it. It's nothing, but things have come up recently that hit on what happens. And it's almost where I don't find it dangerous, but like you said, if you get stuck in the past, you know, you can't really go forward, and it gets you to a time where it doesn't matter. You cannot go back to what it was. And that's something
it's not possible.
No, and that's something I'm really going to have to work on, is letting some things go and really, you know, concentrating forward.
I mean, there have been sort of studies around this of if it exists when you are below 20, it's part of normal life. If it exists before you're 30, you embrace it. If it comes after you're 30, it's that new modern thing you're a little scared of and you have to work to deal with. And it's sort of it's part of our almost a psyche of how we seem to work. And I'm desperately trying to fight that off. Like, I don't like this modern music, and hang on, why? Why don't I? I'm not giving it a chance. I've decided I don't like it because it doesn't sound exactly like The Offspring. Wait, no, this could actually be great. Give it a minute, just let it grow on you. The world continually changes. And if I sort of stay entrenched in, I want to be how I used to be, I become a relic of everything that was there, good and bad, but the world isn't there anymore. So I actively try and force myself to keep pushing forward if I can.
See, when you hit on like music there, that's another thing too. I think it said basically, and again, studies have shown it, that your music that you start to like within like your early adolescence, like that's what gets kind of ingrained in you. Oh, and what was weird about me was my dad was big into oldies, 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s. There's an oldie station when I was growing up. And so he played that everywhere. So I grew up oldies. My first CD, compact disc, was Creedence Clearwater Revival's Chronicle.
Great.
And so whenever, you know, you hear Fortunate Son and you hear Down on the Corner, like a media-wise, it throws you into the 60s, throws you into like Vietnam. But to me, it's like that throws me back into 2000 when I got my car and I was driving to the golf courses back in my T-top Firebird, blaring this 30-year-old music. And so I grew up on that. I listened to some hip hop and rap in the 90s, but I didn't really listen to it until I started coaching basketball and being around a lot of people in that sense that would play it. And so I'm almost nostalgic for country music of like the 60s, 70s, 80s, rock music, 60s, 70s, 80s, but like hip hop and rap of like the late aughts in 2010. And it throws me back to that age. And like you said, now, new hip hop, new rap, I can't stand it.
You just think, no, this doesn't make any sense to me.
It's terrible.
It's not aimed at us.
No, it's not at all.
It's not supposed to be for us anymore, which is kind of scary when I think about it like that.
And that's the biggest thing about as we turn into old men yelling at clouds. It's just, hey, you're not in your 20s. You're not in your early 30s. No one gives a shit about you.
Yeah.
It ain't aimed at you.
Just go and sit and be quiet and just continue to exist. Yeah, that's quite a scary thought. It is. It really is.
I guess that's growing old and that's the thing too. And it's, you know, I talk like I'm some old timer, but I mean, I'm closer to 40 than I am to 30. And
really?
Yeah.
I would not have pegged you for that. I thought you were my age.
Oh, thank you. I'm 36. And so, that means I'm closer to 50 than I am to 20. And that's what I'm saying. And that's my thing to you. Everything was so slow. And even though I had the same job, the 30s hit me. I mean, the 30s have just gone. They're just gone. Yeah. Like everything's there. And I'm like, oh my God. Yeah, I'm going to be 40 soon in all that sense. And it's all downhill. Yeah. And, you know, if somebody would have told me back then, I'd be like, shut up, old man. What do you know?
Yeah. What are you talking about?
I'm going to live forever.
Yeah. Oh, I'm definitely immortal. It's true. It's just a thing I've decided. And I tend to find every passing day, week, month, year goes quicker. Yeah. That was certainly the case through my 20s. And what I found was it was because I was doing the same things. The more new things I tried, the slower time seemed to progress, whether it was a mental thing or it was just that continual challenge of, I'm going to try something new. Like I worked for the same company for 10 years. Even though I progressed through that company and got to where I did, I got bored because I was doing the same things over and over again. The challenge wasn't the same. So I literally dropped everything, took a massive pay cut. I was like, right, okay, I'm going to do something new. Why not? And it really reinvigorated me in a way. Then my knee went crazy and that kind of all slowed down. But my intention is to try and continue that, continually try to do new things, try and embrace as much as I can right now, because I might not get to again.
So when you switched careers, you said you took like a massive pay cut.
Yeah.
Okay. So what was the thought process behind that?
Honestly, there were a couple of things, but mainly I've never had like I grew up with people who had this burning passion to be something like, I must be a doctor, I must be this. I never had that. My burning desire was be happy, be able to support my family, not have to worry about that. That was it. If my job provides me with that, I work for 50 hours a week, as long as I don't hate what I do, I will love the other 200 hours a week that exist in my life. That is fine. And I grew up, we didn't have a great deal. So I'm now in a much better situation than I was. And it's nice to have that, but I've never had that driving urge of I must be X. People keep telling me I should be a politician. So I have no interest in being a politician. Absolutely not. And it's weird. So I've been doing this job. I started with this company when I was a kid. I worked all the way through university with them just as a member of their team. I ended up running the company. Made the company. We were 8 or 9 times bigger than when I took over running the company by the time. And I was bored. The money was great. Life was easy. And I thought that would be enough. And I was miserable. It was affecting my real world. I don't consider work my real world. Work is work. My real world is my real world. And I was just vacant. I was so bored. And as a result, I became like a grayscale version of myself. And the person I was with at the time said, you aren't you anymore. You don't exist. You are literally just, but you need to do something different. So sat down, discussed it, went, right, I'm going to go for something else. A whole new field, whole new industry. I want to start not from the bottom, but from a decent level and try something completely different in a completely different environment. So I did.
How old were you?
I was 29 when I moved. 28 when I moved, actually.
When you did all that?
Yeah.
Oh, that is eerie, because that is exactly what I did.
Oh, really?
In a way. Yeah. I started teaching and coaching high school at 24. And at 28, I was in the same boat that you said there. Everything was just easy. I was bored. I was sleepwalking through everything. I was not to minimize depression. I wasn't depressed clinically or anything like that.
No,
but every day was just drag myself out of bed, and I'd have to go down and I'd go through the motions. And at 28, I decided, luckily connections, the local college team, I was like, hey, do y'all have any spots? He's like, well, we don't really have anything. You can come be a graduate assistant. And so, yeah, I took a 97% pay cut to go. I sold my home that I had two people living with me, giving me $500 in cash a month. So I was getting $1,000 in cash a month. Yeah. That pretty much paid the mortgage on top of everything else like that. Sold it, moved back home, where literally everything went in my closet, and then was making $200 a month as a GA.
Wow.
And I did that. And then within a year or so, I got hired on staff and got to coach college basketball. But then, like you said there, I thought it's because, I wanted to do all this, I wanted to do all that. Well, after 5 years or so, we won a conference championship. So I got my ring and did all that. It was back to where, you know what? I kind of do want my own time. I don't want my life to be this work. And then I got back out, and now I'm back into teaching and coaching high school. So it's just to hear someone else do that did kind of the same thing is, man, that's awesome to hear.
Yeah, it was just, I knew I could continue to go through the motions, but I knew plenty of people who were like a guy that was effectively my mentor, for better or worse. And he'd say, he would look at me, and I remember the end of a day, we'd been working together, and there were parts of my old job that I loved and I dearly miss some of it now that I'm not there. I do. And I'd consider going back now, I think, to that world, because it would be different again. But I remember him saying to me, it was the end of a week, and we'd probably spent 60 hours together that week. And he looked at me and said, can you tell me anything you did this week? Can you tell, what did you do this week? And it wasn't that we'd worked our asses off. Tell me something that you did this week that actually filled you with any sense of any feeling. You can't, you need to change this, or you're going to do what I did. And he had a similar problem, and he almost lost his marriage over it and all that, because he was doing nothing and he became a zombie. And I was like, you're right. I can't, if I keep doing this, I'm going to be very bored, it's just not good. So took the decision, and I don't regret it. I really don't. It was stressful, but I don't regret it.
Yeah. And there's like the stressful part to me, it was almost, that was not the fun. And it's not, because again, some people out there just like, they actually have stress. They actually have struggles. But part of it was just going in, like you said, starting from the bottom and just having to do whatever and being whatever needed to be done. I'm going to do it. I had nothing going on. So I was up there. I was in there an hour before anybody else got in there, and I made sure I was the last person to leave.
And you wanted to be as well. I'm here for this.
And that was it. And then, you know, even with that of how much things changed, because it was there where I met my, you know, now fiance. And at the time, I remember it being like, okay, I've got everything in this closet. I can, on a dime, I can go anywhere in the country. I'll go anywhere to do it. And then you meet somebody and then you start to realize, oh, everything doesn't have to be about a job or what you accomplish there.
Yeah. That's just one factor of what matters. And as soon as it starts affecting everything else, it becomes a problem. So it's about balance, I suppose, the ever elusive balance.
Yeah. All right, man, I appreciate you giving your time up. I know you're busy. And so
it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, this was fantastic. Everything, all information on Lionhart will be down. The show notes and all that stuff, y'all make sure to check them out. The last thing I always do is have the guest leave us with some words of wisdom. Again, it can be something serious. It can be something joking in that sense, but just what is something you would like to say to the listeners out there?
That's a difficult one. I was supposed to rack my brain about this, and then I didn't, and now it's hit me. I suppose it's just a weird quote, I guess. You're never wrong to do the right thing. No matter how it'll impact, if it's the right thing, you should do it.